which results in them ceasing to exist.
What?
They're destroyed on the deepest level that anything can be destroyed. The very idea of them ceases to be. Another reason that
broken.
Later, in the void.
What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, guys, this is a really interesting SCP. I didn't even think this was a thing, but supposedly it is. This is SCP-000, the lost SCP. So honestly, it could be many things. I feel like first and foremost, it might have been maybe an SCP that is not really a thing whatsoever. It's just an empty file or hold placer for something maybe more dangerous, or it was an SCP that got lost within time itself and they didn't know where this SCP is from or like anything about it, so they just gave it 000. Or who knows, it could be something that could surprise me today. But I know one thing's for sure, we're about to dive deep and find out today. So with that all out the way, if you guys enjoy my reactions, you guys want to see more, please remember to smash that like button, guys. Honestly, it helps the channel grow. We're so close to 1,000 subs, and bro, it's gonna be lit. It's gonna go up from here, man. You guys are already on the train right now, so yo, if you guys are still window shopping, you guys are still looking through, like seeing what's it about, yo, you guys already missed out on some of the action, but yo, there's a lot more in store. So with that being said, man, just smash this up button, join the train, all gas, no brakes, you go full throttle, and I'm telling you guys, you won't regret it. We have a blast here, man. This is the strongest family on YouTube. I'm just saying, we'd love to have you. So join and hit that sub button, and also along the way, smash the notification button so you do not miss an upload, because YouTube doesn't always recommend certain videos even if you're subbed. So smash that bell and stay plugged. So with all out the way, remember, shout out to SCP Explained Stories and Animation. Been loving their reaction so far, and I can't wait to dive deep. So with all out the way, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty, SCP-000, the lost SCP. Guys, I'm excited. Let's get going.
working at the SCP Foundation might just be the most exciting job a person can ask for. And by exciting, we mean that if you work as an SCP field operative, researcher, or mobile task force member, you're much more likely to die a horrific death on the job than, say, a plumber.
Why they're so excited.
At least you get the honor of proudly saying that you're the first line of defense between the normal world and the terrifying domain of the anomalous.
Excuse me.
Well,
that leads me to a point that I was always wondering, but they never touched upon. If you work for the SCP Foundation, can you tell regular civilians that you work for the SCP Foundation? Because since I've been reacting to this, I always thought it was something like, you know, FBI and like Secret Service agents. Like you can't really talk about it when you're outside of the facility, which is the Foundation, to like regular civilians. Or is it just like a regular job and, you know, you could just tell your family and friends about it? They're making it seem like it is, but I always thought it wasn't the case. Did you guys feel the same way? Let me know in the comment section below, because I'm really curious about how you guys feel about that.
unless you're one of the IT guys. Then your work life is likely as tedious and uneventful as the computer tech guy working on the Geek Squad. But nothing is ever normal when it comes to the SCP Foundation, where even the person whose job is helping other staff members reset their email passwords may run into the supernatural. Welcome to the strange and frightening world of pattern screamers, and specifically SCP-000.
Pattern screamers?
SCP-000 was first discovered completely on accident by technical researcher David Rosen, a man intrinsically connected to the pattern screamers lurking on the SCP Foundation computer database.
Pattern screamers?
Technical researcher Rosen is actually somewhat of a celebrity around the Foundation staff.
I haven't heard of him.
Due to the fact that he's so perfectly mediocre at what he does.
What? Perfectly mediocre? I never heard someone being special being perfectly mediocre. What work? Okay, yo, let's keep it pushing.
Job as the glorified IT guy at the SCP Foundation was previously held by the more qualified researcher Patrick Gephardt, but Rosen was called in to replace him after Gephardt mysteriously disappeared while on the job. Since 2012, Rosen has been Site-19's user-level tech support wizard, but the best thing that can really be said about his job competency is that he's got a 100% attendance record.
Oh.
He seems to live out of his office, which is described as the filthiest at the whole Foundation. Every inch of the floor is covered in old, broken computer parts, and the air is stale with dust and the twin odors of sweat and lithium grease.
He lives
It's
there?
a place so inhospitable that the Foundation has seriously considered bottling the stench as a kind of chemical deterrent.
The
While
heck?
Technical Director Rosen isn't good at his job per se, he isn't technically bad enough at it to justify the time and resources it would take to replace him.
Perfectly
But the worst
mediocre.
part about Rosen
I can't
isn't
get
his
over that.
performance. It's his truly rotten attitude. He's universally described by his colleagues as being rude, grumpy, and combative.
He's a
with
crybaby
patience that's
too?
far too short for someone working in tech support. And while Rosen does
What?
have a real fear that the ghost of researcher Gephardt is stalking him, he was about to have his first actual brush with the supernatural. It all started when he began receiving automated repair tickets for SCP-000,
Bro.
a file that had no reason to exist. As any longtime
So it's a
follower
file?
of the SCP Foundation will know, the universal designation for the first cluster of SCPs to be discovered is SCP-001. There is no SCP-000. It simply doesn't exist. And when Rosen first found the file lurking on the database, he found that it was filled with worthless nonsense.
What?
The object class was recorded as null. The special containment procedures read, error, field, containment_procedures does not exist. And the mess of a description simply read, internal system error, field undefined.
Okay, so it's just an empty file. So it's similar to like just, you know, a placeholder for SCP-000 because it's nothing really. I mean, if it is that, if that's the case, I guess I'll be okay with it. It would have been a lot cooler if it was like an SCP that like no one has knowledge of and they forgot. It was like a lost SCP, like they forgot it's a forgotten SCP, so it lost its number, so it just placed as 000. That would be interesting SCP. Hopefully, it might be something where there's multiple SCP-000s, and they should do something like that. Yo, hey, you know what? I might make an SCP and send my shit in. Yo.
Please contact System Administrator over and over again, becoming more mangled and nonsensical each time. Technical Director Rosen, who could never resist an opportunity to complain, decided to leave an angry administrator's note on the useless file. He claimed that this pile of junk data was sending out pointless repair tickets because of its broken syntax, clogging up the system and preventing him from doing actual work on meaningful files. He assumed that this was all down to the database not knowing how to react to having files logged with insufficient information.
Okay.
And he suppressed all future repair tickets from SCP-000 before declaring the matter over and done with. What the pig-headed technical director didn't realize was that he was suppressing a call for help from an entity trapped in the white space below the article itself. It was a being born into a pure white world of absolute nothingness.
This cage is vast. It has no walls. While I stand still, all I see is white plains stretching across an equal black sky. There is no life in this place. I can move for as long as I choose, but should stop even for a moment, I am snapped back to the spot before a dam to be tethered to my prison. Despite this, I wanted to wander far, exploring the purgatory I have known for countless years. In my travels in this wasteland of white, I have seen flashes of things, horrible things that simply should not be, grotesque anomalies that appear for a moment at a time, only to disappear as if they had never been there at all. My memories of these creatures continue to lead me back to one memory specifically, a black-shaped being, a formless thing that could have been created by any god in this or any other reality, appeared ahead of me as I walked and stared at me with dead, grissom eyes. As I drew closer to it, in my mind, I could feel its hate, its rage, and its fear.
An entity.
Okay, there's a little bit more. Hold on, let me go back. Emotions I know well, but have never experienced with such intensity as I felt from the...
An entity.
Oh, I can read the last part. Whoa, okay, I just had to read that. I hope you guys didn't mind that. But that... So it seems like an SCP that was trapped in this cage of emptiness, the white. So the blank, probably notepad that is, resonating on for all eternity. This is crazy. Hold up, let me... See this
Being
guy.
born into a pure white world of absolute nut that are over and done with.
Yo.
What the pig-headed technical director didn't realize was that he was suppressing a call for help from an entity trapped in the white space below the article itself. It was a being born into a pure white world.
He was
of
born there?
absolute nothingness. An entity with no name and no place, but it was somehow capable of thought. Its panicked inner monologue is readable in the hidden text, which takes the form of a rambling stream of consciousness. The being first described coming to life in this empty world.
That doesn't seem like a random stream of like what? Like that doesn't seem like random words he was talking about. Let me see. A random stream of consciousness?
Stream of consciousness. The being first described coming to
Rambling.
life in this empty world with no memories of where it was or even how it got there. It spent what could have been years exploring the empty wasteland. Occasionally it would see horrific monsters pop up around it, but only for a split second.
Oh, okay. I think this is a case where literally he's in the data of the SCP Foundation. So when, an SCP agent confronts the SCP, they put it in their system, and that split second when it's in the system, it gets to see the SCP and then it goes away. Bro, that might be the case, or it might be something else.
The entity continued to wander, and little by little, the existential dread mounted as it realized that it may truly be stuck here in oblivion forever.
Bro.
The entity only had one word to go on, a word repeated by some of the monsters it encountered. Foundation. The entity had no idea what this foundation even was, but it grew to hate and fear it. Was
SCP Foundation, guys. Oh my god, let's hear it one more time. Pretty sure that's the case.
being forever. The entity only had one word to go on, a word repeated by some of the monsters it encountered. Foundation. The entity had no idea what this foundation even was, but it grew to hate and fear it. Was this foundation the one that trapped it here? The entity had all the time in the world to speculate on it. Eventually, the entity found its voice. Like any sentient creature in trouble, it began to call for help, eventually screaming, just hoping someone would notice it.
How was he talking to the SCPs, though? I mean, if you came into contact with these SCPs, why didn't you ask them for help? Most of these SCPs are borderline god level, so, I mean, what's the issue? Like, yo.
These pleas likely translated into the frequent IT repair tickets, a coded SOS, an attempt to show that everything was not as it appeared on the SCP-000 file. Perhaps the entity may have found help if researcher Gephardt was still working at the Foundation, but instead its cries fell on the ignorant ears of technical director Rosen. It may as well have been speaking to a brick wall.
Damn.
Rosen, who had all the investigative zeal of Paul Blart Mall made sure that these cries would never lead to the entity's freedom when he suppressed the repair tickets. He had trapped the entity in a private blank hell, forever hating a life it didn't choose and could never escape. A relentless, existential nightmare.
What?
This is the gist of your average pattern screamer. Pattern screamers are a perfect example of literally making something out of nothing. They are often a kind of floating consciousness, created from nothing, trapped in pockets of nothingness between the fabric of reality, driven mad by the purgatory-like nature of their existence. They're less living entities and more conceptual constructs, pure ideas, that just happen to be self-aware of their own existence in their private hellish voids.
Let's try to break this down. So it literally seems like ideas that didn't reach its fullest potential. It's kind of like a writer, like making a book and going like 80%, and just losing motivation and just scrapping the work and didn't finish the last 20%. And then some way somehow that book, gained consciousness of its doomed fate because it was never finished, and he's there for all eternity because he's in a purgatory mode where he's in a state where he's there. He exists because, the author put the words down on paper. However, the author never finished the book. Hence why it's trapped in the hellish void. That was just basically an analogy that I used to try to explain what this SCP might be. Hope that made sense. Just kind of did on the spot. But I feel like that might be the case with these beings. So we shall see.
The SCP-00 File, a file for an anomaly that doesn't exist, and thus had no reason to exist, is a perfect breeding ground for a pattern screamer. Sadly for the pattern screamer in question, Technical Director Rosen had no idea.
Perfectly mediocre.
This isn't the only
God.
time that Rosen had run into a pattern screamer without even knowing either. And just like the first case, he was with no help whatsoever.
Oh God.
This one began with SCP-S, an otherwise empty file containing only this image. Director Winters, a Foundation administrator, wondered why this file even existed. Enter Technical Director Rosen, filled with equal parts sarcasm and insubordination. He gave a condescending reply to Director Winters, saying that the file was there to test the filing system, and the image was likely just a placeholder. Winters never should have been on the page anyway,
Oh my
according
God.
to Rosen. Director Winters was annoyed at Rosen's typically rude tone,
I would be too.
and asked him to make the purpose of the article clearer in the article itself. In response, Rosen did as he was told, filling the article in the most sarcastic manner possible. The whole thing was essentially a middle finger to Director Winters for having the audacity to even ask. Rosen signed off with,
This boy's wild.
Finished. I certainly hope I have been clear enough to anyone who may have accidentally accessed this page.
Oh my
through
God.
what I am sure is no fault of their own. So we won't have any more incredibly competent directors bugging the tech team about this
This
page.
boy's wildin'.
Once again,
Perfectly.
technical researcher Rosen was too busy being a rude, unpleasant jerk to notice he was practically staring another pattern screamer
Oh
in the
my
face.
God.
This pattern screamer, or rather hive of pattern screamers, were trapped even deeper than the one in SCP-000.
It's over, bro.
This one was hidden in the very source code of SCP-S, where a chorus of enraged voices screamed the following. Pretend, monster, just for a minute. Pretend you were the size of an amoeba, dwarfed by even the smallest of bugs. Pretend you didn't hold the world in a glass cage. Pretend you were the one being held by something greater than yourself. Would you still be laughing at your triumphs? Would you still feel pride in what you were, even as pitifully small as you would be? Of course you would, because you are arrogant and stupid. If you haven't guessed yet, we hate you.
Yep, your boy's out. Your boy's out. I'm sending this to a higher up that gets paid way more than me and telling them I want another job. Or I want to be signed to another SCP.
This pattern screamer is clearly more aware of its pitiful station in existence than the 000 pattern screamer. And as a result, it's not so much depressed as it is furious. Though at this point, you've probably figured out that even the entities who have the most casual brushes with technical researcher Rosen end up getting infuriated.
Yeah, this guy's
But while
stupid.
you may have gotten the impression that all pattern screamers are sad little entities worthy of our sympathy and pity, there's at least one pattern
Archives.
screamer that's actually incredibly dangerous. This is
SCP-3930?
SCP-3930, the ultimate pattern screamer, in terms of both size and effect. It's an anomaly so strange it defies typical containment classification, and it bears a level 5 security lock, meaning only those on the level of the legendary 05 Council are cleared to even know about it.
Whoa.
Its greatest containment procedure is the preservation of the very idea that SCP-3930 does not exist, because the alternative has terrifying implications for all involved.
So this SCP is higher than Thamiel classes. It will be interesting to see what level they would rank this SCP. But literally the Thamiel classes, only the 05 Council and people that have like a D clearance or D level clearance, so level 4 clearance could access. But this, you need to be on the council to read this SCP. All right, let me hear this one more time though, because that was pretty interesting and crazy to hear.
Security lock, meaning only those on the level of the legendary 05 Council are cleared to even
Crazy.
know about it. Its greatest containment procedure is the preservation of the very idea that SCP-3930 does not exist, because the alternative has terrifying implications.
That's the idea they want to push.
SCP-3930 is a 1 kilometer area in Russia that is filled with non-existence. To even call it a white void would be inaccurate, because it implies the existence of the color white and the existence of the concept of a void. Nothing exists within SCP-3930, and anyone who directly observes 3930 runs the risk of actively increasing its power. That's why special containment procedures dictate that anyone who observes 3930 must be forced to walk into it afterwards, which results in them ceasing to exist.
What?
They're destroyed on the deepest level that anything can be destroyed. The very idea of them ceases to be. Another reason that
Broken. Okay, yo. So this is a real thing. This is a real thing. Yo. Let's see that one. There's a lot in this video. Oh my god. It's kind of confusing, but I'm trying to hang in there.
3930 must be forced to walk into it afterwards, which results in them ceasing to exist. They're destroyed on the deepest level that anything can be destroyed.
The deepest level.
The very idea of them ceases to be.
What does that mean, though? So, for example, if I'm just bullshitting around and I walk into, SCP-3930 and I fall in, does that mean no one will ever know about me as a person? Will my channel be gone? Would everyone that knew about me, would that memory of them know me in their mind will be gone, and that will be just an empty spot, and be like, oh, I thought I remember some guy, but I can't put a finger on it. Would that be me if I fell in the void? Because the very idea of them ceases to be. So they're erased off of the face of the earth completely, and erased from people's minds itself. That's what I'm gathering. They said the deepest level. That's scary, and that's insane. No one would ever even remember you or even know that you existed. Bro. Yo, that is such an interesting way to, wipe someone out. I wonder, I would love to see an example of seeing someone getting wiped off and seeing if someone, still remembered them. And, if their life affected them in any other way since they're gone. Oh my god. I'm going to a black void, bro. This is just a lot. Let's get back to it.
The reason that SCP-3930 is so special is that because it's the largest area of nothing in existence interacting directly with our reality, it's the only place that a huge number of pattern screamers can be directly observed by humans. They're described as being like sentient hallucinations. One researcher suggests that these pattern screamers are created by the way the psyche shatters when brought into contact with raw, true nothingness. The nothingness acts like a hateful mirror to our worst thoughts, reflecting them back at us in the forms of restless screamers. Regardless of what they actually are, one thing is for sure. Coming into direct contact with one of these screamers is a harrowing experience. In the end, it just goes to show that pattern screamers are a complex entity.
Yes,
they can range
complex
from
indeed.
microscopic to massive, from pitiful to downright terrifying.
What the heck?
The sad result is that, in either case, nothing can really be done to stop them. It's just as impossible to stop the nothingness existing in SCP-3930 as it is to save the entity trapped in the white spaces of SCP-000.
You got actually two
Maybe
SCPs
the best
in one.
option is to actually be more like Technical Director Rosen.
Perfectly
Keep your head
mediocre.
down, focus instead on your own petty worries, and bask in the warm bliss that can only come with having no idea what you're dealing with.
I mean, that would make sense, but everyone's not perfectly mediocre. Oh my god.
Downside is that this may make you a pretty lousy IT guy.
Yeah.
Now check out SCP.
Okay, that was great. Literally, oh my god. That was so interesting. I need you guys in the comment section below. If you guys have a good idea, a good grasp about this SCP, let's see what you guys have to say about it in the comment section below. Let me see what you guys' take on it too, and how you guys feel about some of the questions that I, brought up within this reaction. I would love to hear you guys' own opinion about this SCP, the questions, and what you guys feel about it in general. And also about SCP-3930. That was a surprise, and that was insane. Insane. The concept of that SCP was really dope to see, and wow, I was blown. If you guys enjoyed this reaction, please remember to smash that like button and also smash the sub button as well to join the family if you're not already part of it. If you made it this far and you're not part of the family, yo, you might have to get yourself checked out, bro, because this is heat, bro. This is where we have fun. This is where we have a blast, and let's do it together. No cap. So let's get it done, and remember, turn on post notifications so you do not miss an upload. So with that all out the way, fortunately, concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one. With